People feel cooking is daunting, but it's not really. I mean, the other kitchens I've been, there have been pans being thrown at me, or they sort of like blunt your knife,
Right.
like, so that you can't use it. I'm not saying that it's bad that it was hard. I think that culture was bad because it perpetuated and it just became worse. My grandmother's from Kerala, so then she'll taste it. Then she'll ask me, why you put so much salt? Like, I'll say that cooking was not my first choice. At the time it was fashion design.
Interesting.
As you can tell by my fashion sense.
Curiosity is the key to the imagination.
My girlfriend podcast, let's do this.
Dream the impossible dream. Welcome to Mike Helpin's Curiosity Podcast.
We're here with Darren Teoh. Awesome, man. Thanks for coming. Thank you very, very much. If people don't know, he's the chef owner of Dewakan.
Yeah.
And it's, to me, one of the most unique and interesting restaurants in the world. And two-star Michelin chef.
Thank you.
And he's got a new restaurant called Bidou,
Yeah.
which I had the pleasure of dining at last week, and it was excellent. That tomato tart was unbelievable. I loved it.
It's not mine though. That was that recipe is from a chef friend of mine from Tokyo. Oh well, his restaurant's in Tokyo right now. It's called Cezanne. It's a 3-star.
Okay.
And I think he had like some tomatoes that were in season, and they were like at the prime. And then he made this tart, and I saw it and it looked stunning. And I felt like I wanted to try it out ourselves. So I texted him and said like, if I put your name on the menu, would you give me the recipe? And he was like, yeah, go for it. And so he sent it over. And then, so now the name that's on the menu, Tarte au tomate Daniel Cavet, that's his name.
That's so cool.
So it's his.
It's like the free license of a product.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, you kind of give honor to whom honor's due, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. So all right, let's start from the beginning though, because I'm really interested in like the roots of what it takes from a man like you to get where you have achieved nearly the pinnacle of success. I mean, some would say the pinnacle of success, but I know that you probably want more. So yeah. I'm not going to say pinnacle, because I have a good idea for the kind of personality it takes to get where you've been. So tell me a little bit about like what inspired you to start cooking, and how did that all come about from the beginning?
I mean, I think inspiration is probably a very large word for it.
Okay.
I think there was a time in my late teenage life where you kind of like want to figure out what you got to do and what you need to do, and you're about to leave school, and and then you realize that you probably would have squandered most of your school life anyway, just running around playing football and doing stuff outside of the classroom. So I think my father recognized that I'm fairly intelligent, I'm good with my hands, but maybe just sitting down in the classroom was always very challenging. And so he said like, okay, you know what, why not? Let's go have a look and explore different avenues. Cooking was one of them, because I was quite handy in the kitchen at home. I cooked with my grandmother, cooked with my mom, grating coconuts or slicing onions or something like this. So I could manage the kitchen. I mean, I could manage myself in the kitchen. I said, why not pick up cooking? So we went to an education fair.
Okay.
And I'll say that cooking was not my first choice. At the time, it was fashion design.
Interesting.
As you can tell by my fashion sense. And then it was fine arts, and then it was cooking. But my dad said, look, we can choose whatever you want, but pursue a 30-year education. Figure that one out. And if you get through that, and then you can do whatever it is you want to do.
Okay, well, let's back up a second because you said you were cooking with like your grandmother and your mother in the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
So did that have an effect on where you are today? Like, did that, I mean, I know that might not have been your first choice, but having that hands-on, because I'm sure you didn't have hands-on fashion work,
No,
right?
yeah,
So having that hands-on, and do you remember some of the stuff that you cooked with them? Like, what kind of food?
Well, I mean, it was just a natural inclination to be in the kitchen, right? Because in an Asian home, the kitchen is the central part of the home, right? So you spend your time there. There's usually a table where you have your meals there, so it's often connected, the kitchen and the dining room, at least that was how it was in our house. And so it was the day-to-day meals. So I stayed with my grandmother in the daytime when my mom and my dad was at work. So she'd cook if she does the fish curries, or if she does, fried whatever's, so you just lend a hand because she just doesn't want you running around the house and breaking stuff.
Do any of those dishes spur something in you? Like, do you have any definitive moments? Because I know I do, like with my grandmother, for example. I remember going to my grandma's house every year for Thanksgiving, and she lived on kind of a farm. It was like a 10-acre piece of land, and she had her own garden that was huge.
Yeah, right.
Right, and I remember eating the fresh vegetables out of the garden. And
right.
till this day, if I have a raw piece of green bean, a string bean, it brings me back to that garden.
Yeah,
right?
right.
If I have it. And then she would always make fresh coleslaw, like as one of the side dishes with the turkey and everything. And I still use that recipe today in my own household.
Yeah.
So is there something like that with you in the Malaysian, with the Asian cuisine?
Yes. So I think like there are I have like about 5 aunts, right, in the home, and when I was born, I think like about 6 or at least all 5 aunts was living in my grandmother's house at the time, and it was, and so food was always a very important part of growing up. The two very distinct memories. The first is my grandmother would take me on a couple of occasions. She would dry out all of these spice on like these big rattan sort of trays, and she'll sun dry them, and then she'll pack them up, and then we'll take the bus and head into town. And there used to be a mill on Jalan Ipoh, and she would leave her spice there to be ground into whatever curry.
Oh,
So
wow.
so she had a little preference for, okay, so this is for fish, and this is for chicken and meats, and this is for dal or whatever it is, and she'd have a few, like, and they would grind that and they put that into these old Nescafe bottles, and then we bring that home, right? So that's always been like this sort of like this idea of you have control over every aspect of cooking, or nearly every aspect of cooking, if you endeavor to do it. And then I guess the other very strong memory, besides all of the cooking that happened in the house, was Christmas. Because just like you, for Thanksgiving, for Christmas was a very big thing for us.
Yeah.
And she had a repertoire that was only available during Christmas.
Right.
And my aunts, they'll get together and they'll start doing the cookies. And she's Malayali. My mom's side, they're Malayali and they're from Kerala. My grandmother's from Kerala. So a lot of the sweets and a lot of the snacks, that preparation, the murukus, that preparation happens like almost about a week to 2 weeks before Christmas.
Wow.
And then on Christmas Day, we could have like up to about 70 people coming to the small little house. And she would have prepared like the chicken stew, she would have like a pot roast, she would have, so there's this like repertoire that needed to be cooked for Christmas. And ever since, after she passed, that's probably one of the biggest points of contention that we have in our family. Like, okay, who needs to cook what to kind of replicate what my grandmother used to do?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And did you take the reins on that? Did you add any twists to it, or did you keep it
No,
how it is?
I think if it's something's great, don't muck around, right?
Right.
Like I feel, and I think it's not just about, like I think it comes to a point when it's not creating something, or creating something that you are familiar with is also just as much a test of skill, I suppose. You don't have to make it your own, I guess,
Right.
because there was a precedence.
And was she super precise with her recipes, or was it all done by like taste?
No, it's all taste.
That's how my grandmother was the same way.
So when my grandmother was alive, she used to live with us, and I must have been maybe late high school or maybe just early years college, and so she had a stroke, and as she was recovering, I asked her to teach me how to make stuff, right? And so she would be sitting down on the table, and I'll be at the stove, and we're putting stuff in, and then then I'll say, okay, so how much is salt? And then she said, yeah, you just put salt. Yeah. So how much? You put this much. I say, Amma, look at my hands and look at your hands. Like your hands are tiny,
Right.
and look at my hands. See, you just put, and then I'll just put it in, right? Because I just follow her instruction. And then she'll taste it. Then she'll ask me, why you put so much salt? Like, yo. So I mean, like, I think it was, I mean, you can't duplicate, at least on the first round, you can't duplicate 50 years of cooking the same dish.
Right.
I mean, there's a sense of presence there that it's impossible for you to wrap your head around the first time round.
Yeah. Yeah. And you figure it out, but you figure over time and repetition, you figure it out.
Like
right.
it's just repetition. A lot of people feel cooking is daunting, but it's not really. I mean there is cooking for different things, right? But like if you're cooking to feed yourself, for you to have a sense of accomplishment, or to enjoy the food that you're making, it's only a question of doing it as often as you can and being present while you're doing it.
Right, right. And getting it to where you are most satisfied.
Yeah, where you're most satisfied. And the satisfaction can come from two things, right? Like one, how you would like it, or if you feel like you will also like it if you kind of honored the way it was done previously, then you can duplicate it to that, right? You can't chase the sort of notion of everything being authentic, because I'm not sure if you go far back enough, like what is authenticism, but I think it's important for you to come to a point where you're comfortable with what you're serving, and enjoy that moment for what it is.
Yeah. Talking about I mentioned the coleslaw earlier, right? So that's one of my favorite dishes my grandmother made. So I did something exactly what you said, except I added a little bit of both. So I replicated it to the exact flavor.
Yeah.
However, I added purple Asian cabbage to represent the 16 years that I've been in Asia.
Yeah, right.
And add my own little twist to it.
Yeah,
but it still
right.
has that same authentic flavor.
Yeah.
Similar. All right, so getting back to you, you went to the high school, you went to the fair, the job fair, at technical skills fair after high school.
Yeah.
And you're looking at these different categories of jobs, and then what drew you towards actually becoming and focusing on cooking?
I mean, I think the first two ideas were just really romantic notions. Like, I had no clue what it took to be a fashion designer.
Right.
I never sewn in my life. I had no idea. Apart from like t-shirts, I probably had nothing that would resemble fashion. But many years later, I did recognize why that was on my mind. It was simply because I think I have an eye for nice looking things, and I have an eye for not fashionable things, I suppose, not things that are in trend, but things that do look good and could possibly look good.
Well, I'm looking at that shirt. Did you design that shirt?
No, this one I did not.
Oh, okay, okay.
This one I know I did not. This my business manager designed it, and the idea was to kind of like replicate this. When you get like these bootleg T-shirts
Yeah.
from like the night market,
Uh-huh.
we wanted to just replicate.
It's
that.
hilarious.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
It's a play on the word. If you can't see it, if you're just listening to the podcast, it says Dewakan, which is
Yeah.
kind of a play on the words of the restaurant, Dewakan.
It's because people always get this mixed up. Like
Okay.
when they instead of Dewakan, they always call it. If you're familiar with the language, then you always a lot of people just say Dewa Makan.
Okay.
And this T-shirt is the images here are from the God of Cookery.
Yeah.
So Stephen Chow did a movie called God of Cookery, and so Dewa Makan translates loosely to the same.
Okay, so Dewakan means God of Cookery.
Yeah, I mean Dewa Makan, yeah, God of Food or God of
Okay,
Cookery.
God of Food. And Dewakan means what?
Dewakan is a portmanteau of two words. So
Okay.
Dewa,
Uh-huh.
meaning a deity
Uh-huh.
or a god, and Makan, meaning food
Okay.
or to eat, right? And I wanted to have a name that didn't signify food of gods, which most people assume is. Instead, it was food from gods, because if we looked at our terroir, I mean, like the Peninsula, Borneo, and Southeast Asia in general, like you're having rambutans one day, and you eat the fruit and you spit the seed out, and you come back in about 3 weeks and you see a sprout.
Right.
Right. That's how fertile the ground is, and there's just so much to learn about where we're from, and that's why we named
Oh,
it that.
okay. Okay, so going back, fashion was out, and then you
Fine
still
arts
had
was out.
fine arts was out. I mean, but they all have a creative aspect to it.
Yeah.
Right? And there is something very, very creative about the type of cooking that you do, and in cooking in general, really.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the act of cooking is a creative act, right? Like,
Yeah.
It's not. It might not be. It might not be artistic, but it's an act of creation. And like I was saying, many years later, I realized it was having a knack for what I could see with my eyes, the visual aspect, and then also what I can do with my hands, the tactile aspect. And I think cooking just felt the most comfortable option for me, because it was one thing that I thought I knew I understood. And that's where I went with it.
So where did you go? Did you go to school? Did you go to chef school? Where did you go?
No, I took a degree in hotel management and catering.
Okay.
The school's kind of defunct now. In fact, the
Okay.
building doesn't even exist anymore. Just up on Sultan Ismail.
Oh, right.
Did 3.5 years there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I graduated. So during the 3.5 years, because it was so central to Kuala Lumpur, I used to do a lot of part-time work.
Okay.
Hilton was next door, and Hilton, the old Hilton. This is before the one on Central. This was on Sultan
This is
Ismail.
before my time.
Yeah. So they used to be right next to Wisma Genting.
Oh, okay.
There used to be a building there that was a Hilton. It was the original Hilton. I think it must have been about, at the time, maybe about 40 years old at the time, maybe.
Okay.
They used to have a really one of the larger ballrooms. It was about 1,100 people. So when they have events, you go and work part-time there. I used to do part-time just right up on Changkat before it was crazy. More Jalan Mesui, so it's like...
And this is Labushon you were talking about.
Labushon's where I did my internship.
Okay.
And Labushon was maybe around... was right before Frangipani opened with Cuisine.
Uh-huh.
So it was that era.
Yeah, like I said, I took my wife on our second date to Labushon.
Quite crazy, right?
Yeah, well, and it was kind of like in a it was kind of like
Yeah,
downstairs.
you kind of like have to walk down. And
Yeah.
Because Havana is at the top,
Uh-huh.
and then across the street,
Yeah.
and then just sinks down. a
Yeah, it
bit.
was like, it felt like it was almost a
Yeah.
basement. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so you did an internship at Labushon, and then first real job in a kitchen.
The first one really was, I think, the first was Singapore.
Okay.
Moved to Singapore to work at, well, so there's a little story to that as well. There was one of my lecturers here. It was a Frenchman, and he reached out for me to a chef in Singapore and asking for a job, right? Asking for a job for me.
Yeah.
And that chef there linked me up with another chef who was looking for a space, looking for a position, and that chef said, okay, after some ding donging, he said, okay, we'll take you. Can you move down in about a couple of weeks? I said, okay, yeah, we'll arrange that. I was gonna move down. So I think like a day or two before actually going down, I get an email saying, okay, I'm sorry, but we filled up the position, and your work permit didn't come through or something like this.
Oh,
so I was,
no.
well, I already made the decision. I think I was going to leave like the next day or the day after everything's been bought. So that was pretty disappointing.
Yeah.
Went down, met the guy, and then, well, it was kind of a dead end at that point, right?
So you're down there in Singapore. You've got nothing.
Yeah, I moved all
going
my
on.
stuff down.
Okay.
Stayed with like an aunt that was living there, and we decided, okay, you know what? So okay, what do you want to do, right? So I started looking for a job. Started hunting. Must have done maybe about 10 or 12 interviews, hotels, restaurants, anybody that was on the internet that, or
Right.
no, wasn't the internet. I think it was like, I think it was a Tedler's Best Restaurants guidebook or something like this.
Okay.
Or one of those, and then we just going through all of them and making calls and things like, and arranging interviews, and I think I shortlisted two. One was the Fullerton, which was a hotel.
Yeah, love that place.
Really nice hotel.
Yeah.
And the other was Les Amis.
Okay.
And at the time, the chef was Justin Quek, so this is really a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, like, okay, you know what, this I can do. Like,
And that was quite a famous restaurant.
It was.
Like a French restaurant in Singapore, right?
It was. It was one of the top restaurants, especially probably the best restaurant outside of a hotel.
Okay.
Because 10 or 20 years ago, if you want to do a fine dining restaurant, it usually was in a hotel, and you didn't have many of these independent ones.
Right.
And Les Amis was definitely one of those.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent 5 years with the company, cooking at Les Amis for a short while, and then they moved me to a bistro on Greenwood Avenue. It was called Sebastian's. Did that for a couple of years, and then they moved me to a fine dining restaurant, the other fine dining restaurant they had in the EJH Corner House. It was called Au Jardin. It was in Botanic Gardens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we have an Au Jardin in Penang, right?
And then we have Kim Hock's Au Jardin.
Yeah. But okay, so let me ask. This was early 2000s, right? Like roughly around that time. So I had restaurants, and I had a chef who was from New York, and he was very New York, and he would tell me stories about kitchens. And then you hear Anthony Bourdain, and like with Kitchen Confidential, and he would tell me stories about kitchens in New York and how like you really took your licks when you were the low guy on the totem pole. Yeah. They would sabotage pans for you to burn your hands. They'd throw shit at you if you didn't listen. What was it like being the low man on the totem pole in a kitchen back then in Asia? Was it a similar hostile environment, or was it a bit more chill?
No, it was not chilled.
Okay.
It was. I mean, when you read Kitchen Confidential, and I think why it resonated with so many people is because many of the cooks that have read it could identify. Yeah. That culture was a horrible culture, and if you're at the bottom, it was hard. I'm not saying that it's bad that it was hard, I think that culture was bad because it perpetuated and it just became worse over time. I would easily say I had contributed to that culture as well. But it was tough. It really was tough.
Because it's almost like joining a fraternity or something. It's like you've got to earn your stripes. Like from what
There's
I understand,
a rite of passage.
Right, it's a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Do you have any good stuff from back then that you can remember, like that affected you maybe and like taught you a lesson, for example? Like I heard stories about, guys early in the kitchen, they'd say, "Hey, Rook, go grab that pan for me," and they'd grab it without a towel and they'd burn their fingers.
I mean, I've done that.
Okay.
To someone else.
Right.
Probably not the smartest thing I've ever done, but I mean,
it's part of the game growing up back
well,
then.
I mean, like I'd also say like it was very unnecessary. So a lot of times, a lot of what I've been doing for the past 10 years or so is just really unlearning these sort of like traumatic techniques, But I think there's a line where you can be hard and you can be strict, but I think when it came to some things like that, it was completely sadistic, right? Like it's just completely sadistic.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, like on the first day of work at Les Amis, I had never sautéed mushrooms, much less seen fresh mushrooms.
Wow.
Because back in the day, it was all the stuff came from tins. You don't have like fresh butter mushrooms like you have now. Like, so this was in Singapore, in one of the most reputed restaurants, and I was with my chef de partie at the time, and he was busy doing something, and he said like, "Darren, saute these mushrooms," and I'm like, "All right, I can do that. It's just mushrooms." It was a cast iron pan. I'd never used one of these before. So I've never sauteed mushrooms. I've never used a cast iron pan before, much less even seen fresh mushrooms. But with all the confidence of an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old, so yeah, I can do this. Yeah. And the pan was not even cold before the oil went down, and then the mushrooms went down, and then it started leaching, and from across the stove, even before my chef de partie could see what I had done, from across the stove, Justin Quack, the executive chef of the time, turned around and pointed straight at me. "Do you know how to cook?" And my instant response was, "Yes." And that was it, man. He came over. He's a little bit shorter than I am, and he slapped the back of my head, and I was crushed, because not because I wasn't ready for getting a bollocking. It was really because of who said it. So it was very intense, and it was that opportunity for you to impress the one person you needed to impress just fell through the grates. And then I got shifted right to the back of the kitchen to do prep.
Right.
And I was there for a long while.
Yeah, well, that's how it starts, right? You have to learn how to cut, learn how to. Yeah. I'm surprised you didn't throw something. I thought you were going to say you threw something at you, because I know some guys are famous for throwing things.
Yeah. I mean, I think like that was. I described that incident because it was soul crushing. Right. Like the physical stuff, I'm a fairly tough guy. I can take most of it. Not that you have to, but like I could. The other kitchens I've been, there have been pans being thrown at me, or knives being sort of like, what do you call it? They sort of like blunt your knife,
right?
Like, so that you can't use it. You're probably gonna get another one. But I've also been thankful to have had very good mentors, and that's one thing I've also learned. Like even though they can be very hard on you, but they'll also teach you, and they guide you through that process. They help you navigate and maneuver around this subculture of being in a kitchen. Everything like Bourdain writes back in that time was relevant. Like you go into a kitchen, it was all pirates.
Yeah.
They were all, I don't know, ex-money lenders or, just definitely the toughest, a tough bunch of people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's and now, how does that relate to nowadays? Because now it's I think people are softer now. People aren't as hard as they used to be.
Yeah, I don't think it's that they're softer. I think it's just shifted, right? Like I was on the precipice of a generation that had a degree or had education moving into this realm.
Right. People
And
are more educated now.
Yes, and before they were not necessarily so.
Right.
Also the industry has shifted quite a bit, right? There's this sort of like seismic move. Before, the chef never sees the guest. Almost never. The guy who's cooking, you're at the back. There were some chefs who made a show of it, and they recognized it for what it was because it helped with marketing or it helped with the service. But some chefs just stayed behind.
Right.
Now you're required almost to pose for a photograph.
Yeah.
You're required almost to see some guests.
Right. Back then, it was front of the house, back of the house.
That's why you had a maitre d'.
Yeah. Right.
The restaurant manager, the maitre d', that was his job.
Right.
He was meant to host. He was meant to be the gracious host. He was meant to be, and everything that he said would kind of happen. And it was between the power struggle, I suppose, was between him and the chef. And he would come to the chef and say, "Can we do this?" And the chef would say, "Oh, okay, can we do that?" I can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And so there's this sort of like power struggle in the hierarchy. And then all of us at the bottom is two elephants fighting and all of us stuck in between. And that's changed now because the demands are different. The people who work in the kitchen are different.
Well, now the chef is the star also because I feel like it's gotten a lot more
out of hand.
Showy, a lot more artistic.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think the artistry has always been there. It's moved definitely.
It's gotten enhanced. It's become a lot more visual.
It is
A lot more
extremely
visual.
visual. It is extremely visual. But I also feel there is sort of like an idolatry around the profession, in the sense that there is a rock and roll stardom to it.
Yeah. It's very flash to own a restaurant.
It is. But I think I guess the issue I have with it is that it's sort of like, you've put a very humble position or a very humble profession, and you put it onto a pedestal, and it becomes a popularity contest sometimes. Sometimes. And can you blame the guy? No, you can't really, because he's trying to make a business work. And if that's the pandering that the market leans toward, then why not do that, right? So I guess the media has just kind of shifted the way restaurants are in general.
Instagram particularly. I mean, Instagram, I think that's one of the reasons why everything has become so much of a show. I mean, it kind of started with like Heston Blumenthal, right? Back in England with, what was it, Core? Or what was the name of his
His was Fat Duck.
Fat Duck, excuse me, yeah. I've been there, and it's much
elaborate.
of a show, but then once Instagram came out, it was like, wow, they see this gets clicks, this gets views. Let's see if we can replicate it,
Yeah, I mean, because, the social media platforms were you could directly connect to the masses, right?
Right.
Before, you'd have to go through media, and that's controlled either by magazine or by TV or something.
Yeah.
And you don't have control over that. But now, when you have social media, you have direct access, and then people flow in directly to you.
And all of a sudden, everybody's a reviewer. Because last time, it was like the New York Times. If you got 3 stars in the New York Times, it was you were the place to go in New York. Now there's 1,000 Instagram food reviewers in New York, and people are looking for that. Nobody's reading the New York Times as much as they were.
Yeah.
Okay, we went off track a little bit. I want to go back to you. Let's go back to your time in Singapore, and then what happened after you went to the bistro? And you worked at another fine dining restaurant?
Yeah, so Lizami, I stayed with the same company for
Okay.
about 5 years.
Okay.
They had many outlets. And it was also at the point where it was sort of like the golden age, I suppose, where they were expanding. At the time, Lizami had 3 fine dining restaurants. So there's Lizami, which was out at Shore, Lighthouse, which was at 1 Fullerton, I think, and then it was Ojaran, which was in Botanic Gardens.
Right. Okay.
They also had a slew of new concepts that they were building that were a bit more casual. There was a bistro, there was a French bistro, there was an Italian pizza joint. I think there was a steakhouse and a few other things that they were developing. So what they would do is they would move you around because they just need more people, or they need experienced hands or something. And so after Lizami, they put me in the bistro, and I spent a couple of years there, and then I moved to the fine dining in Botanic Gardens called Jalan. And then I think I had enough of Singapore and I wanted to try other things.
Yeah.
So I came home, and a few things were happening personally in the family life, as well as, if I'm not mistaken, it was around the time of the London bombings, and I think there was some unrest in Europe at some point.
Yeah, maybe like 06, 07, something around
could
that
be
time.
around there. Yeah, could be around there. And then visas became harder to come by.
Okay.
So Europe was out of question. So I had to stay back. So I was back in KL. And at the time, I wasn't very sure what I would do, and so I took up a teaching position in what was formerly known as KDU College.
Right.
And I did that for a couple of years, quite a few many years. I enjoyed it because, I wouldn't. I think it was a very enriching experience because it took me out of the game, and it helped me to re-strategize, I suppose.
Well, it's kind of also like a reset, right? Going from these hostile kitchens of the early 2000s, being the low man on the pole, and now you're teaching and you kind of can foster your own environment.
Yeah, almost, but not really as well, because I took a lot of those bad habits.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And I felt like, okay, look, if these kids are gonna learn, then they should learn the hard way.
Right. Right.
And I think I exemplified that a little bit too much. So it was very fear-driven.
Right.
And I think I didn't particularly enjoy teaching. I think I was okay, good at it, but I didn't enjoy it. I don't think the kids also enjoyed me having me as a lecturer, because it's just probably not an enjoyable experience, especially if you're just starting out. So yeah, so it's like wilderness years almost.
But do you have any of those kids from KDU still with you, or have they gone on to do bigger and better things?
Yeah, I mean, bigger and better, I'm not sure, but some of them are still in the industry. I think a lot of people have been were impacted by my time there.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we did have a hefty standard.
Yeah.
And I think they appreciated that after, when they've left and then moved on with certain things.
So from KDU, that's where Dewakan kind of was seeded, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember going there. I went there
in the old space
numerous times to the old space at KDU. Yeah. And I remember, were you using that as a test kitchen at first? What were you doing?
No. This is the story of Dewakan, right?
Yeah.
I don't own Dewakan. Right now, Paramount Corp owns Dewakan.
Right.
And it started off in KDU University College as part of the School of Hospitality, Tourism and Culinary Arts.
Right.
I had, I think in my opinion, two visionary leaders at the time, Miss Kitty and Mr. Oliver, who were my bosses. And
Okay.
I was like, okay, you know what? I think we should be doing something with. So sorry, let me backtrack. The before it was in Culinary, it was in Damansara Jaya.
Okay.
It was a smaller campus there, and KDU had the ambition to move the campus to Glenmarie with a larger university campus. And it had something like about, I think it was 30,000, 40,000 square feet of kitchens or something like that.
Yeah, that's when I went to. It was
That's the one, right?
in
So
Glenmarie.
it was immense. And leaving, and there was an opportunity to explore something different. And I mooted the idea of what if we had a working, functioning commercial kitchen restaurant there. They thought it was a great idea, and we had to go through the whole process of figuring out the business plan. And I already had the concept. I already had like the idea of the name, and all I had to do was convince Kitty and Oliver that it would work, and they helped me with that. And then the then chairman and also owner of the company, the late Darren Teoh,
CQ.
CQ,
Yeah.
was, he also had faith in what we were about to do.
One of the nicest guys in the world, by the way.
Super visionary.
Very nice guy.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like when he puts faith in you, he expects you to do it, but he'll put faith in you.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's how the restaurant began. As part of the new campus, took a couple of years to put everything together, and then we started the restaurant. And as the restaurant, I guess what we were all not expecting is the kind of success that it experienced in the first 4 years.
So did you take your best students and employ them, or did you outsource from other areas to get the employees in the restaurant?
The first batch
Yeah.
of the team at KDU were all ex-students.
Because that's what I remember. I remember that was like part of the story. Like it
Yeah.
was ex-students from the university
They were all
running this. But I mean, the other amazing thing, I mean, for me, the groundbreaking thing was the ingredients that you were using. They
Yeah.
were just like totally local,
Yeah.
exotic. I mean, please tell us a little bit about that, because to me, that's what sets Dewakan apart from everywhere else. And you were the first to do it.
I think we always wanted to do something with our backyard, right? Like that was the basis of the name of the restaurant.
Yeah.
And right at the beginning, that was the learning curve. We grabbed whatever we could from wherever we could, and try to make sense of all of this. And I think that was, you could see you've eaten there most recently, and you've eaten when we first kind of started. And you see the evolution of how our use of the ingredients, the cooking processes, the presentation of the dishes. It all started with recognizing that what we're doing is an exploration and investigation into our backyards.
Yeah.
And all of that got pulled together. And obviously you get better over the years. You get bolder over the years. And that's really our journey.
So were you guys literally going into the jungle and exploring some of these ingredients? Because that's what I'm curious about. I'm really interested
Yeah, no, we didn't do, the team didn't do that. I did that a couple of times.
Right.
Because there were like 5, 6 of us in the restaurant in total.
Yeah.
So to run both a service and the kitchen, we couldn't just pack everyone and go, right?
So, yeah, but I mean, because I don't know where you get these from, because you never even heard of these ingredients before.
Yeah.
I've never heard of these ingredients. I mean, granted, I'm a layman in terms of, jungle fauna, but it was very exotic ingredients.
Yeah. So the first iterations, really we had people from the markets that would kind of explain stuff to us, and then we would say like, hey, could we try getting some of this? And then they'll try and get that, but they would make the connection between us and the forest. So that was the first part of it. And then as we grew a little bit more comfortable, we'll make connections with indigenous people, and we'll say like, hey, can we try getting some of this? And and they say, yeah, okay, and you never hear of them. You never hear from them for like about a month or 2 months, and then suddenly you get a call or like a text and say, hey, we've got some of this, would you like it? And then we take as many as we can because we know the season's, real short, like 2
Right.
weeks.
Wow.
You got 150 kilos, you got to get everything in, right? Or you'll never get, or you'll never see it for another year. Then you're stuck with 150 kilos of something that you have no clue what are you going to do with, and you're forced then to figure all of this money that you've spent on this mystery product
Yeah.
and figure out what you're going to do or how you're going to deal with that.
So when you approach a new ingredient like this, and even coming up with a menu, right? I'm curious to know, because I've experienced it when starting my restaurants and creating new products. It's almost a mixture of artistry and science. And in terms of like creating, it's almost like chemistry, right? Creating those new menu items. So what's your approach? How do you do it? Is it just process of elimination? I mean, you don't have to give away too many secrets, but I am really curious as to your process.
I think the process is, I think the first thing that we have to recognize is that the sort of what people regard as creativity is not an epiphany moment. It's never just an epiphany moment. You don't wake up and say like, you wake up, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. For me at least, it's a culmination of life experiences that kind of get layered to a point where it reaches a saturation, and then the last drop of that is the ingredient. And then you taste it and you're like, hey, this reminds me of something. Hey, I thought of this. Hey, I saw this. Hey, I read about this. And then all of that comes together and you cook it for the first time. And then that learning curve starts to build on itself. And that's how we come up with dishes. It's never just like, oh, I think this will go great with this. And just in your mind. It's never just that.
So it's an evolutionary process.
It is. It's definitely an evolutionary process. Well, I mean, it's both, right? It's evolutionary until you can make it revolutionary. Right. I don't believe creativity comes out of nothing. Mm-hmm. It must come out of substance. In order for you to do well, you must first have a prowess in your technical skill. You must have a knowledge great enough to understand ingredients. You'd have to understand flavors, and then you'd have to understand who you're serving it to.
Okay.
The more you have a buy-in into all of this, then the end result becomes a little bit more clearer. It's not clear, but a little bit more clearer. And you build on that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time going to your restaurant when it was in KDU, there were flavors that I tasted that I'd never had before, and I thought it was so unique. And that was one of the reasons why we kept coming back. Yeah. And I think over the years I could tell that every once in a while I'll taste something and I'll be like, that reminds me of something from maybe 5 menus ago. Yeah. Where like that, just a little hint of that flavor, like that sourness, or something like that. And so when you're creating a menu, like let's say you're an omakase chef and you're creating a menu, you put certain dishes at certain points to try and give them the customer a peak experience, right? Yeah. How do you decide what goes where? Because you've got how many dishes on your menu?
We have 11 at the moment.
Okay.
I think we've taken cues over the years. We've taken cues from guest feedback onto what you would consider a peak moment. There was a menu where we served the roast meat almost the second dish. We served the lacquered goose with, I think it was pumpkin or something. That was like almost the second dish. We served the roast meat. And then so the idea behind that was really like, why serve like the heaviest part right at the end when you're kind of like almost full, right?
Right.
So do it right in the beginning, and then it just kind of tapers down into something a little bit lighter. Mm-hmm. So you don't feel like you've had like an extremely heavy meal. And we tried that once. It worked out really well. At least I think it worked out really well, but it didn't translate into other menus.
Right.
So every menu, dishes get moved into sequence just depending on how intense that particular dish is going to be, and where we want our guests to experience intensity, and where we want them to sort of like lighten out a little bit and then taper out or taper up.
And you also, if I recall correctly, you changed the number of dishes over the years, right, per course. Have you, or has it always been 11, or was there a point where one time it was like 14 or 15? Because I remember once
done larger ones.
there was a big one, and I remember at the end you had to roll me out of there. It was so full.
Yeah, I guess that was also learning. That was also a learning curve, right? It was fashionable at the time to do 20, 25 dishes.
Right, like Gagan or somebody like that.
But it just didn't make sense for us.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense for our clientele. And I think in the way that we wanted to cook, so each dish that we've done has always been quite complicated in the preparation and the method of preparing them. And just to make 25 of them just didn't make any sense.
No.
Or to make 14, to be honest.
Yeah.
So we've scaled that down.
And you've come, well, look, I mean, you're, to me, one of the most unique restaurants in the world. You've come a long way from KDU. Now you've got, one of the top floors in Menara Felda, right?
No, in Naza Tower.
Naza Tower, sorry. In Naza Tower, overlooking the entire city, right? When you're there, it's an amazing experience. You can see the entire city. So what does it take to go from being a groundbreaking fine dining restaurant to attaining your first Michelin star?
I think the star is not something that you set out to earn. I think a star is a reflection of what you're already doing. And so if we take that posture, that means that everything that we do is really more internal than it is external. And I say this only because I feel like there's this misconception that a star is something that you work to attain. It's, they come in anonymously, they eat, and then they tell you, and then they don't tell you anything, so they eat and they go back and they grade it, and that's how this collection of people have evaluated and thought what their experience was like, right? And then you get a star or 2 stars.
Right.
We just want to do things better than we did yesterday. We want to hold on to what our values are, and be able to chart our own course. Just do what we think is important to us from a cooking standpoint and also from a business standpoint. Because you can say, it's artistry till you're blue in the face, but if you don't have the money to keep going, your artistry will die.
Right.
So there is this balance, So I don't believe like cooking is always an art. It's mostly a craft. You'd have to turn that into some sort of commercial value.
Okay, so from 1 star to now 2 stars, there's only 500 restaurants in the world that have 2 Michelin stars, and yours is one of them.
Yeah.
To get to that level, is it being a perfectionist? Is that part of is that something you need to have as being a chef that is able to get to that level, one of the top 500 in the world?
I think it's a good way to go about it, but I think what we've done is just recalibrated what we want to be a perfectionist at. Like, does it matter if something was cut 1 cm by 1 cm by 1 cm, like into a perfect cube? Does that really matter? Or does it matter that it's cooked well? Or does it matter that the guest has an amazing experience? Or does it matter that we're profitable? So I mean, like, what exactly do we want to be perfectionists at?
Right.
And I think that then kind of defines everything else. We want to be a good restaurant. And a good restaurant is a place where people come and they have an amazing memory and they have an amazing experience. For whatever it is that they're paying for, that they have a moment in time that is valuable to them, that they can hold on to 10, 15 years from now. I don't know. Right. And that's really our main objective. So how do we do that? We try to make sure that everything has a purpose and you're intentional about every decision that you make. Whether it's the cooking, whether the way things look on the plate, but the way it's delivered, the temperature is delivered at, the way the tables are facing, you know, a window with like the city skyline, everything.
I think, you know what, that transitions to a question that I have that you kind of answered it, but because you're doing such a high level of food in a country where most people can't afford this kind of a luxury, right? You're talking between 7 and 800, 900 per meal, 7 to 800 per meal, where the average income is, you know, 3,000 or 4,000 a month, right? But I suppose, I mean, you just said it yourself, you're not paying for food, you're paying for a memory, you're paying for an experience. Is that, so in that sense, what kind of customer base do you get coming into the restaurant, and how do you, you know, how do you look at that?
We have, at the moment, we have, I'd say about 75 to 76% of our guests are travelers. And then the remaining are from Malaysia. And we recognize that the ones that do come in from Malaysia have chosen our restaurant for a special occasion, either for a special occasion or they are regular gourmands, right? So that's really just kind of the mix right now. We'd like to increase the percentage of Malaysian guests, but we haven't found a model that works well with, you know, with a pricing structure. But I think that what we do pay attention to is that when we do get, you know, Malaysian guests and they are coming in for a celebration, we try to make sure that the experience in itself is as enjoyable as possible. Like, it doesn't have to be, you know, spectacular. We just want to make sure that it's enjoyable. We don't do birthday cakes. We don't sing songs on your birthday or your, you know. But we feel like whatever we can offer to you in that brief moment of 2.5 to 3 hours, we try to make it as special as possible. By doing what we do best.
Yeah, because I've spoken to a couple of guys who work for me, and they're like, when I tell them about the restaurant, you know, they say, "Wow, I can't even imagine paying for something like that." And I say, guys, you have to understand that this is the best in the world. Like, you're getting to experience something in your home country and in your home state and city of Kuala Lumpur that is literally at the top level of food craft in the entire world. And if you get a chance to save up for that experience, because I'd say it's more of an experience than anything, it's almost like saving up for a vacation in that sense. You know, you go there. And I think that's why so many travelers go, because this is the kind of place that you travel to eat. Yeah. Because you're not getting these flavors, these ingredients anywhere else in the world. Yeah. Right? So obviously, you know, you have 2 Michelin stars, one of 500 in the world. There's one more hill to climb, I guess, which would be 3, and I think there's maybe 150 3-star Michelin restaurants in the world, and you don't approach it like there's a plan, right? You just want to keep getting better and better. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So getting back to the ingredients, though, I want to talk about, like, when you're curating menus, one of the interesting things I find about Dewakan is when you go, you have this whole fermentation wall. And there is stuff that is being fermented for 6 months, 9 months, sometimes I think up to 2 years, right? If I'm not mistaken. So in your mind, when you're crafting menus, are you like, this thing is going to be ripe 18 months from now. We can put that on the next menu. Yeah. So you're thinking that far ahead when you're that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, like we try to put these. I mean, we already have access to all of them. We know that if you're going to get like about 150 kilos of a particular ingredient, you have to preserve them. no two ways about it. Like, you have to figure something out, right? You're gonna have to freeze it, or if you're gonna have to salt all of it, or if you're gonna have to start fermenting it, or something. You gotta figure something out. And it doesn't make sense that you buy all of it and then don't use it. So, so it does become quite a significant part of the menu, menu process, and then the other part of it is we have a lot of surplus parts of a plant or of an animal, which I just really hate throwing away. And I just want to figure, we use this preservation program as a way to figure out how we be able to extract the most out of anything, and then use that for longer periods of time. And so, for example, if we had on the menu a particular product, and a particular garum, for example, that we use as seasoning, and maybe that's venison, and once the venison's run out and we've got a goat next to it, we just use the goat, because essentially we're looking for flavor compounds. And so I'm not a stickler for, oh, you've got to be venison, it's got to be venison all the way, So I mean, this is where the intuitive part of our cooking comes in. And so the guys are not just robots, but they're able to use the ingredients and at our disposal, our arsenal of ingredients, and apply that to actually cooking, and not following like, okay, line 1, line 2, line 3.
Right. So there is a little bit of flexibility in there.
There's quite a lot of flexibility
within that set menu.
Yeah.
And how often you change the menus again?
I'd say about a year once.
Once a year?
Yeah.
And what month does that happen?
I'd say towards the end of the year, maybe about September, October.
September, October? Okay.
Yeah, so it means I have to be like cracking my head now.
Right. Yeah, that's my next question. How long does it take to develop that menu?
Yeah, it takes a while.
Okay, so you're saying like 6, 7, 8 months, 9 months?
Yeah, I mean, like the conceptualizations should start now. Like I should start thinking about it now.
Okay.
And then it'll take about a few things have to happen at tandem. One is that we'll have to find the right kind of ingredients, the quality that we want, the logistics. There's that one going.
Right.
And then the actual dishes.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's like, oh, I really like this ingredient, we're going to use that. And then the procurement, or like my procurement manager, she'll start looking and she'll start getting it. And then on this end, maybe the dish doesn't inspire me as much, and she's already found like someone, and then I'm like, maybe we won't use that ingredient. Then she flips out and tries to kill me, and so it's a very long process.
Oh man, I had something I wanted to ask. Okay, so 6 to 9 months in curating the menu, do you ever feel pressure in terms of like creating that next menu? Does it have to be better than the last? Do you put that pressure on yourself?
Yeah, I think I often do. I think we've really been trying to separate myself from this creative process.
Okay.
Just so that we can see how it would look in the long run, like longevity, right? At some point, I always feel like this is my last menu, like I don't have anything else. Then I squeeze everything out, and something pops out. And often I feel it becomes more inspired than the last.
Okay.
But I should also say that I have a fantastic team with me, who allow me to do what I need to do. So sometimes whether it's running the operations without me, and just nailing it every round, or coming up with creative, with actively participating or passively participating in this creative process. I'll give you an example. You had the tart
Yeah.
The last time you were around.
That was at Bidou, not Dewakan. Just
Not-
to clarify for everybody.
Right, so-
His new restaurant.
Not that hard, but the one at Dewakan.
Oh, at Dewakan. Okay.
At the end,
yes.
at the end, you might have got, unless we ran out of it. But at the end of the meal, the second last dessert of the meal is a small tart made out of what we call a dabai lat, and basically what that is dabai seed kernels that have been processed the same way as chocolate.
Yes, I did have that.
So it's cacao-less.
Yes.
Right? There are a few things there that are quite interesting. The tart shell's made of heart of palms that have been brushed with like keluak syrup, and then you get like this really cacao sort of flavor to it.
Yeah, yeah.
But then the actual tart, the filling of that warm chocolate tart or the cacao-less chocolate, came from one of my team members having a few things, right? The first part of it is we have our chocolate concierge, which supplies us all our single origin chocolates, and we invited him to come and do a little training session with the team. And then at the same time, we were pressing dabai seed kernels for its oil, and we were using that in dishes.
Right.
And this oils, this fat, sets at room temperature. So one of my team members thought like, hey, that's nearly the same as how you'd actually produce chocolate. You take the cacao mass with the fat, and then you add a sugar to it, and you just conch it and blend it till it emulsifies, and then it becomes a solid piece. And so he did that with a Thermomix, the dabai seed kernels, the dabai seed oil, some sugar, and he produced the first round of dabai lat, right? And I thought, holy crap, this is genius. It was like super amazing. It tastes so similar, but it's got those nuances. It was really interesting, and that became the root of how we ended up with this dessert.
Okay.
So I also have like an amazing team. It was like,
Yeah.
it's like all of these like, chef, try this, and just stuff something in my mouth. I'll eat it first before I ask him, okay, what is it, And so there's a lot of that dialogue that's happening, and that helps with my creative process because there is a dialogue.
Speaking of the team, how big is the team to run a restaurant like Dewakan?
Right now in total, we have about 20 people.
Is that front and back?
Front, back, and 3 people on admin and business management.
How many sous chefs do you have?
I have, at the moment, I have 1 sous chef,
Okay.
but I have a chef de cuisine as well.
Okay.
So he's the top guy, and then the team we have like 1 sous chef, and then, sorry, we have 2 sous chefs now. 2 sous chefs, and then a few chef de parties and a few demi chefs.
And now, just recently, you opened up your new restaurant, Bidou, which is still in kind of soft opening phase, right? Yeah. And how are you managing that? What inspired you to start that? Is that from your early days at Les Amis?
Yeah, a little bit of that. Also, I feel like there's a gap in the market for it. For something that's not a bistro, it's a restaurant. It's not bistro food. It's just a shorter course and like a larger portion. We felt like there's an opportunity there. And so what I did was I took my previous chef de cuisine, and I moved him over to this project as an operation manager. My assistant restaurant manager at Dewakan, we moved to Bidou, and one of my sous chefs at Dewakan, we've moved him as a chef de cuisine. So we've sort of like transplanted a team over.
Okay.
And then we hired all new.
And by the way, this is not at the expense of Dewakan, because I thought Dewakan's menu was the best menu I've had there in a very long time. It was. I thought it hit on every level. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
And Bidou is, I think, more affordable for the rest of the population. I mean, it's not as in the atmosphere, in the stratosphere as Dewakan is.
No, it's not. I mean, like it's maybe about midway, but it's heftier. The idea is for you to come in and have a quick dinner. 3 to 4 courses is a lot faster than doing, say, 10 or 11 courses. It's lighter in the sense that it's not as formal. You come in, you do what you want. You have have a couple of glasses of wine.
Yeah.
Then you go home.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it. Really loved it. Gonna go again. Gonna tell people to go. All right, I got a couple of quick questions here before we go. We talked about movies earlier. You're definitely a bit of a cinephile, as far as I could tell, and there's definitely quite a few movies about kitchens, right?
Yeah.
And I found that some of them were quite accurate, especially going to that old school style, right? Are there any films that you think are the most accurate as relatable to the real world?
I don't watch movies on cooking.
Like Chef? Did you ever see Chef?
I didn't watch.
What about the one with Bradley Cooper where he's going for...
I didn't watch that.
Didn't watch that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, wait. Chef is...
John Favreau, when he starts the food truck.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I saw that. I think maybe that was that and the 100-mile journey.
100-meter journey. 100-meter, yeah, that
So
was pretty good too.
But those were the two last movies I've watched on cooking. I've never watched any after that.
The Bear?
No, I didn't watch
You've
that.
heard about The Bear, I'm
I've
sure.
heard of it, yeah.
Yeah.
I've very consciously stayed away from these movies because I want to watch a movie to be entertained. I don't want to live life. I thought I lived through it, like
Right, I know what you mean.
I come from this, right?
Yeah.
But the big night. Was it the big night? I think it's called the big night.
Yeah. Okay.
Tony Shalhoub and Stanley Tucci.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's probably the best movie on restaurants that I've seen. Like, I totally enjoyed it.
The Big Night. What year did that come out?
1996.
96. Right. Okay.
It had Stanley Tucci, Minnie Driver, I think.
Campbell Scott, Stanley Tucci,
Tony Shalhoub.
Tony
Yeah,
Shalhoub.
yeah.
And what is the guy who... Mark Anthony, was it? Like, there was a... Was it...
The actor? I mean, the
That's the
singer?
singer?
The singer?
He was on that as an extra. Not an extra, he was on it as
Like a
as
cameo
waiter.
or something?
He was on it as a waiter. So I think like it was when he first started out.
What was his name again?
Mark Anthony?
Mark Anthony?
See?
No? But you know that guy, right? Like,
Yeah, I know
the
Mark
singer?
Anthony. Yeah, yeah.
He was the waiter. He was a
He
waiter
was
in the movie.
that's around the time he was starting to get into movies. He was also in the movie with Denzel Washington where he played a role with Dakota Fanning. That revenge film. Very good movie. Yeah,
Dakota. What show was that? Yeah.
the one that took place in Mexico
Yeah.
where he just went on a,
They kidnapped the girl, right?
yeah, they kidnapped the
And then
girl.
he was-
the one responsible
Yeah,
for
he
it.
was the bodyguard.
Yes.
And it turned out to be, I remember that.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of that movie. Great movie though.
Good show.
Man on Fire.
Man on Fire. Yeah,
Man on
that's what it
Fire,
is,
yeah.
Very good show.
Okay, something that I like. I have found some of my favorite restaurants by asking chefs where they eat out, what their favorite restaurant is. Like, for example, I love Japanese food, so you'd have all these Japanese Japanese chefs coming in, and I'd ask them all, where do you guys love to go? Where do you eat? And the name that consistently kept coming up was Sumika in Subang, the yakitori place.
Yeah.
Been here forever.
Yeah.
Super authentic, really good yakitori.
Hard to get a spot.
Hard to get a spot. I'm a regular there now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The guy knows me.
So you got the number?
I got the number. Yeah. Because for a long time they didn't advertise their phone number.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where does Darren Teoh like to eat?
I don't know, man. I mean, I've got 2 young kids, so it really revolves around their palate and where they like to eat. I like by default, I like chicken rice. I go to one near my house. It's called Shuang Xiu, and I think it's dope. Like, you can't fight someone with, like, I mean, if you get into an argument about, like, where's the best chicken rice, you're just going to lose because everybody's going to lose, right? Because they all have their own favorite chicken rice spot.
Right.
This is mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shuangsu. All right.
Shuang Xiu. It's in Paramount Garden, so it's like,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I'm gonna take a look at that.
But
So-
I should just also preface this, right? Like, we talk about, like, great places to eat. I'm not sure if, like, chefs are always the best bet.
Right.
Because you spend so much of time working, you don't really have a lot of time to like check out a new restaurant or like there's some restaurants that have just opened, and I have no idea.
Yeah, but you know what's good, and also
True.
You may have a larger flavor range than a lot of people, or
True.
maybe it's more precise.
But
Which one is it?
But like also you kind of like you kind of like want something really defaulted,
Mm.
right? It's you just like, okay, look, I want to hit that spot, and that's just what I want to hit.
All right, what
You know what I
about
mean?
going for a drink? What about going for a drink? Like I don't know how it is in KL, but I remember like in New York, all the chefs afterward would go out for drinks, and
Yeah.
it's always like a late night kind of a scene.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like that here.
No,
though.
it's not. I mean, I think, I mean, pre-pandemic, I think people go out like, they'd have supper.
Right.
More than you'd have like a drink, right?
Right.
And maybe for supper, you'd have a couple of beers, maybe.
Right.
Maybe. But like, I think that's kind of tapered down quite a lot.
Okay.
I know younger cooks don't do that.
They don't.
Yeah, I don't think like there's a big congregation of you know, a place where a lot of cooks go and they'd have a meal. I don't know. I don't think they do. A lot of my guys go back home
Okay.
and sleep. I remember working in Singapore after service on a Saturday night, because Saturday night, because Sunday's going to be a day off. Everybody go to like Newton Circus,
Right.
and you're bound to find you know, these guys from Equinox, or these guys from the Raffles Grill, or the Lezami guys, and you know, you'd see each other. But that doesn't translate well.
Well,
here, I
Singapore
think.
is more urban. It's more confined, right? KL's more spread out. Yeah.
And public transport,
Right.
right?
Right.
So you know, you don't drive, so that hence you can drink.
Everybody can go to the same place. It's a lot easier
Yeah.
to get there.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about Western food? You have any favorite burgers or favorite Western spots in KL? Or what kind of food do you usually like to go out and eat? For that matter, if you're not cooking at home.
You know, I saw this question and I've been racking my brain still for it. I like to try and eat at home when I can. Yeah, I'd say okay. So I think I have like moments where I want to have like a bak kut teh,
Yeah.
right? And then I'll tell my wife, like if like it's on my day off on a Sunday, I'll tell my wife in the afternoon at least, hey, why don't we go for a bak kut teh and we'll drive down the Klang.
You go to Klang?
Then we'd have to organize like nap time, gotta get up, and we get, you know, how long it would take us to get cleaned up and then drive down, and do we call my mom, call my dad, should we just take a carpool down? So it becomes quite an adventure. But yeah, you know, I like eating bak kut teh, I like eating, you know, chicken rice. I love eating a good Indian restaurant. Like we were previously, just last week actually, on Easter, we went to this place called Alibaba and the 41 Dishes. It's on Tunku Abdul Rahman, I think. It's on Tar, I think.
What town? What area is that in?
It's downtown.
Oh, downtown.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just nearby Chowkit, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Super
I'm gonna
delicious.
Keep that in mind.
Really delicious. For breakfast, well, not by default, but like this is really nice place that we go. I dropped the kids off at Kindi, and then just in Ara Damansara, just right down, there's this place called, I can't remember what's it called. Dudu Yummy.
Dudu Yummy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Dudu Yummy.
Just go with it. It's called Dudu Yummy in Ara Damansara. It's
What a
a little coffee shop kind of place. It's a neighborhood
They
coffee
better
shop.
have good food with a name
Yeah,
like
well,
that.
I know, man. I mean, they could have thought that one out a little bit more. You know, so they've got all these stalls in there. There's this like kway teow teng. It's like, you know, noodle soup, kway teow noodle soup, super nice.
Okay.
Like old style. It's like an old style cooking feel to that. I would have that regularly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. From my own knowledge, I love like char siu, suyok. You have
Yeah.
a favorite spot for that?
Char siu, maybe not so much. Is it? I can't remember the name. Wong Mei Ki is one, right?
Yeah.
That's like a famous one.
Yeah, I've been there.
Fat Ki, I think, is another one. Fat Ki.
I think I've heard of that.
That's also nearby.
Yeah. It's like over down there in like Pulu
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Like just nearby Wong Mei Ki, I think it's a. I'll tell you, I've laid off suyok for a while.
Any reason why?
Yeah.
I want to hear why, because
tell you why.
sometimes when I overconsume it, I get a pain in my side.
Yeah, okay.
Do you ever get that?
No, that's not what happened. Okay, that's not why
Okay.
I have a friend, and he's able to like get like a spot at Walmaki,
Okay.
right? So the first time he said when he told me that he could get a spot, like I got excited, right? Because it's all the time you go, you have to wait like 45 minutes or something.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, let's go, right? So I arrived there. Before that, he said, dude, when you come, make sure you bring like a container to pack some of this bags. It's like,
Right.
no way, I'm not going there to pack. I'm not, like, I mean, that's
Right.
like, I mean, just go there, you enjoy it, and that's that, right? It's like, okay, yeah, but he insisted a couple of times, so I said, okay, I'll get a container. And I put it on the top of the stairs, and we went out of the house, and I completely forgot about the container.
Oh.
So we drove down, we got there, everybody's waiting. It must have been like maybe about 9 of us on this table, and it was a lot of food. Like,
Yeah.
for every 2 people, it was like maybe a quarter chicken, maybe like, I don't know, like about a full plate of like char siu, and like a big serving of the siu yuk.
Uh-huh.
And okay, well, I'm really excited. Never had this before. It was like an amazing experience because you can't do that at Walmaki. And we were eating, and when we were done, it was stuff. I just couldn't eat anymore because it was, it gets a bit fatty after a while.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a bit much. And then my friend disappears for a while, and so we're still chatting. And then he comes back with like a bag, and in it is this like these the cartons that hold 100+ cans.
Yeah.
So 2 of them were like squished together
Uh-huh.
with rubber bands and a whole slab of siu yuk inside there.
Oh, wow.
Sweet.
Just
I thought, wow. I mean, after that meal, I don't think I could have eaten it anymore.
Yeah.
Right? And then all of these peering eyes of everybody was like waiting for a table, and you're like walking out with like a big slab of like the siu yuk. And then I went back and I was like, I don't know how to eat this. I couldn't eat this, and we like portioned it out to like about 5 or 6 pieces. I gave some to my sous chefs. I gave some to my mom, but I just couldn't eat siu yuk for like months on end, man. Like just because of that meal, it was so abundant. But yeah, I just couldn't, like, because just,
oh
much.
boy. Well, too much of a good thing, right?
Too much, yeah, way too much of a good thing.
You have any you have anything going towards char kway teow?
Yeah, I like a good one, but I haven't found like one that's. I mean, okay, I like a good one. I won't actively seek one out.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about outside KL? Let's talk like, do you ever go Penang, Malacca, Borneo, Kuching, Sarawak?
Yeah, no, I don't really have a lot of time to travel.
Because Penang is always known for its food.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, if you go to Penang, you definitely have to. I mean, when we go to Penang, we've got good friends up there. So Kim Hawk and Johnson, they take and Nur Karim, who's the chef at Jawi Peranakan House.
Oh, okay.
Jawi Cafe, sorry.
Okay.
And they'll take us, eating. So sometimes I don't even know where we're going.
Right.
But I love nasi kandar. Like I go and wherever you take me, Dean's or I don't know where, you just take me and I'm gonna enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, they can be a bit nerdy about it, like a bit geeky about it. Like this one, the gravy is not like that, or you should be like this. I don't care. Like if you just flood my rice with as much gravy, give me okra, I'm happy. You know?
Yeah. Oh, I discovered that when I came to Malaysia as a late night meal. I
Oof.
love that as a late night meal.
Yeah, as you
Nasi
get
kandar.
older, it gets tougher. to
Yeah, you can't do it
digest,
anymore.
but like it's always like very satisfying.
Yeah.
Like it's satiating, very satiating.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So I think I hit everything that I really wanted to talk about. Yeah, you have a couple of kids. How old are your kids?
My eldest Essa is 6,
Okay.
and then my youngest just turned 4 a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I've got a boy turning 7 next month.
Oh, wow.
And a daughter turning 4 next month.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
and,
very
and
close.
another daughter is 2.5. Yeah.
Oh yeah, wow.
Yeah, so we're a bit busy, and I know what you mean about going around their schedules and what they
Yeah.
like to eat. Right?
Yeah, man.
Because sometimes they're so picky too.
They
kids.
are. But I think like we've been really active about. I mean, I cook for my kids nearly every day.
Okay.
Ever since they were born, I would spend the morning. I'll cook a meal so that they have something to eat for lunch and for dinner. And I think we've been very active about allowing them to try as many things as possible.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like kids like 4.5, he's already had like foie gras and like truffle and things like this. You know, it's like hazards of the job. We've got great friends when you go there. When we go out and eat, they want to spoil them as well, and you know, we never say no.
It's crazy, right? Like these kids are getting truffle fries, and I didn't even know what truffle was until I was in my early 20s.
My 20s, like, wow, what is this? You know, I had to be working before I could even.
Yeah.
I think I have this amazing story. Like, we took, I think it was right after the pandemic, one of those moments where the restaurants were open, and we went to Ontier.
Mm-hmm.
Masashi was at the restaurant, and he was so super gracious to us, and we said, you know, I think Essa must have been, I don't know, yeah, maybe just around 4, and said like, okay, you know, could we just get like a simple pasta for him? And Masashi, you know, the way that he is, he's like, oh yeah, no problem. And I think he served Essa like an amuse-bouche, which had like foie gras in it, and you know, Essa just, because it's so tasty, right? So he just ate that, and then a simple pasta came out. So it's just a real, you know, it's just cream-based pasta, and then I was about to start feeding Essa, and Masashi comes into the restaurant. I mean, comes into the table, and then starts shaving like white truffle. I was like, whoa. Like, I don't think I can afford to keep up with this, diet, right? Like, you know, and that was his first experience with truffle.
Wow.
So it's really nice in the sense that when you go and travel and you know, you eat at your friends' places, and they really, they take care of your kids more than they take care of you. And that's nice.
That is nice.
Yeah.
That is nice. Yeah, these kids have it lucky. They have it good.
They have
Especially your kids. They have Darren Teoh cooking for them at 2 meals a day.
They better learn how to cook fast, man.
Yeah. Well, hey, man, thanks so much for coming in. I think great talk. I
For the
learned so
conversation,
much,
yeah.
man. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, buddy.
I
Thanks for
really
having
do.
me.
I really do. Yeah. Good. Got to come by and check it out again. Bring some more people to Bidou. I want to bring a bigger crowd to Bidou.